Hey there, I'm Allen Firstenberg,
I'm Isaac Johnson,
and we are Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs.
Isaac, welcome to the show. Good to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
You and I were chatting. We're both GDEs, and we were chatting in a GDE conversation the other day. And you talked about how you were using both Gemini CLI and Claude Code CLI. And I thought this would be a great opportunity for us to kind of talk about those two products and the concept of the CLI developer tool in general. Um, that's why I invited you on, and then you said you're a frequent listener, which I'm deeply honored by.
It's great to hear everything new that all these different voices you get in the different AI communities. So I appreciate Two Voice Devs, and it's an honor to be here for sure.
Oh, thank you very much. So before we begin, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and kind of how you got to where you are now?
Sure. The first time I cut code was in the '90s with Fortran, so it's been a while, right?
Ah, Fortran, yes, excellent.
And I kind of got to Google in a different kind of way, in that I very much have always been in DevOps and SRE. And at some point around 2016, started to move to cloud and leaned in on AWS and Azure. And as I started to involve myself with some Googlers, and my company that I was working for at the time, WellSky, was going full in on Google, I got more and more involved. And the more excited I got, the more I talked to the Google community, and that's how I got into the Google Cloud Innovators program, which eventually transitioned into the GDE program. So that was kind of my path into the Google program, and it's been exciting. I often see you on some of those chats, and it's really great
Those some of those are pretty wild chats. We really do have a great time there.
for
Um,
sure.
and your background is in development though, so you started as a developer and moved into DevOps.
Correct. So early on, right, DevOps wasn't even a term. So we used to call it SCM for Software Configuration Management. There's all these practices that involve building and source code control. And I think just over time that grew to DevOps, then DevSecOps, and then SRE, and then also my career as I've grown a little bit more seasoned, become more from the individual contributor up to the architect. So there's all sorts of places I move and shake all over the place.
And I think that's the characteristic about a lot of people is that we keep moving around. We're finding the places where it makes the most sense for us to be, where we fit in well, and where we can contribute something. So that makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
So, as I said, what the reason I wanted us to chat is that you had some background with Claude Code CLI and Gemini CLI. Why don't you kind of start off by, I guess, describing what these two things are and what's
Ab-
special about them?
Absolutely. And I think we can even go before that to talk about. We saw first with kind of GitHub and Copilot this idea that we can have an AI assistant help us in our code in various ways. And that gave rise to Gemini Code Assist, and then things like Project IDX, which gave us a containerized instance to run Gemini Code Assist. And so we start to have these litany of tools. And one of the things I've been excited by with Claude Code and now Gemini CLI is the idea, like, I don't need plugins to a code editor to figure out how do I set up
Mm.
JetBrains, how do I set up VS Code. I can just launch the command prompt and ask it for help doing whatever it is I want to do. And it takes away some of the barriers to entry.
It's funny you say that in a couple of ways. It takes away the barriers to entry, and yet lots and lots of people would say a command line, that's a huge barrier. That's a big lift. There's a big difference between working in my IDE and touching a command line. So it's an interesting perspective.
Perhaps, but I think at the end of the day, if you're a developer and you're trying to solve a problem, you would ultimately just like to ask the tool to help you with that. And so taking away, well, I got to drag this window to the side so I can have the chat and then point at this file and just talk to it. For me, it simplifies things. You are right. There's a command you have to do to install it. But once you've done it, it becomes really simple.
Well, but I also feel like there's still lots of people that just kind of look down on the command line.
I suppose, but I think at the end of the day, if we're writing code, we're writing code, and there's going to always be an aspect for me anyway where I want to see what it's thinking and what it's proposing to do. And that's one of the nice things about Claude Code as well as Gemini CLI is that as it does things, it's going to say, is it okay if I do this? Is it okay if I do that? I'd like to have some chats with it there.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, and I agree with you. Trying to stick everything into the IDE does make it crowded. It makes for this, everything's trying to work at the same time. Whereas if I want to focus on something, I want to focus on it. And if I've got a question, I want to go with that separately with that question. And one of the things I think originally when we would have we'd go to Gemini or ChatGPT in the browser to ask these questions was it didn't have the notion of context.
No.
So I'd have to paste in something, maybe my whole, tons of code to say, what is this doing? What's going on here? And when that tool got integrated into the IDE, it at least gave some context. It had a tool that was now context aware. And Claude Code and Gemini CLI kind of have the best of both worlds for me. It's out of the way some of the time, but it's there. It has the whole context when I need it to have the context.
Indeed. And like you said, oftentimes I'll bring up Visual Studio Code and I'll have Gemini Code Assist on the left and GitHub Copilot on the right. And sometimes I flip over to a Continue Dev plugin so I can talk to OpenAI. And now my code is this much of my screen.
Yeah.
And this much of my screen are like 5 different AI chats. And now I'm losing context with who I talked to last about the problem. And it's making things worse.
So how do the CLI tools, I guess, address that for you?
I think ultimately when I bring up the CLI tools, I have a problem. I'm thinking of a problem, and now I want to address it. In other words, if I have to address something like a copyright notice or a piece of text, I'll just edit it in the editor. But if I want to solve a build problem, I will go with the CLI tool because something's not compiling, something's not issued, and I'd like to just have that dominate the full screen and have our conversation. So yeah, I often, if it's quick edits, I'm in the editor. But if I'm doing a real deep dive problem, then I switch over to the CLI. And almost always, my pattern is I will use the CLI, we'll work through a problem or a feature, and when it's done, now I fire up my Visual Studio Code or my editor of choice and see what it did, right? Because one of the things I've done with these code assistants, and this is like the biggest pro tip anybody can take away, use a revision control system, use Git. So check your code in, then ask it to do a bunch of stuff, and if it does something wild, undo.
Right. Don't do too much at a time. You don't want to say, do that, now change this as well. Oh, change this as well. Oh, change this, get one thing, get it to the, solve the immediate problem. Commit it again so you've got another bench point, and then try, go for the next phase of the conversation. I totally agree. I think that's one of the best features about using these two tools together is that, I'll have it change something in the files that I'm working on. I can then go use the IDE to do an excellent side-by-side comparison of what just happened and approve, tweak it a little maybe, and then commit.
Absolutely. Just yesterday, I was working on a problem, and I had the code assistant help me build it out. And when I opened up the IDE, I was looking at my files and saw, oh, there's a Helm chart for this containerized app I completely forgot about. I never asked it about. And I, all of a sudden, I'm glad I reviewed everything because I would have completely missed that change.
Okay, so anything else you kind of want to talk about, describe about these things, or maybe we should just go kind of take a look at how you use some of them.
I will, but I do want to cover something. Now,
okay.
I'm a big fan of Claude and using Claude Sonnet 3.5 and 3.7 and now Opus. Incredible tool. But it's pay to play, right? And so one of the challenges I've always had with Claude Code is every time I bring it up to do an edit, at the end of it, it tells me how much I just spent on my money. And then I'll say, was it really that hard, Isaac? Should I really have asked it to update my deployment charts? I just spent 35 cents to do something I knew how to do. There was another time I had it develop unit tests, and I'm like, yeah, I would have paid $1.50 for that. That was that was worth it. And so I have this transactional relationship that really goes to my pocketbook because I'm paying. And one of the things that's really blown my mind to Gemini, and again, I'm not here to sell for Google, I just happen to be using it and have reviewed my costs after the fact. I am getting things faster and cheaper. And for me, that's great because every time I do Claude Code, even if it works, at the end of it, it tells you, you just spent this much money. So I'm loving on the Google because the amount they give you for free is just mind blowing.
And that's a great point. Maybe let's kind of look at that right now. Is that so? Claude Code is your it's a service that they include as part of their standard rates, correct? Or is this
Correct. So let me bring up my screen for a moment. When I'm in Claude Code, I see immediately from Anthropic exactly how much I got left. And every time I hit the thing, it will tell me how much I spent on my cost. So I'm always playing the game because I feed the pig. Do I have enough money left to hit the limit, right?
right?
What I do like about Google, even if I went wild with my asks for Google Gemini CLI, I'm like, I might spend a venti latte, right? That's the most I'll ever spend in a month because they just give you so much.
And I think the other kind of crucial thing to realize with the Gemini CLI is that it's working with Gemini Code Assist. And for many hobbyist users who are just starting out or just want to play with it, it's free. It's like 1,000 requests a day, completely free.
I couldn't believe it. And it was the pro model, and I was trying it, and I kept watching it, and it'd go from like 99% context left to 98% context left, and that's pretty much where it stopped. I'm like, I'm hammering this thing, and it just doesn't make sense not to use it. Like if
No,
you are
right.
into trying to edit your code, this is the tool to use, in my opinion.
They're certainly looking to get people to use this model, to see the value in it. And then as companies adopt it, they're going to be adopting some of the paid versions of it. So that's kind of where the hook is eventually going to come in. But for individual users, this is just empowering us.
One more thing that I really like is they open sourced it. So
Yes.
because it's open source, I, as a big open source advocate, feel like, okay, I can trust this. You aren't hiding things from me. And for me, that's a huge sell factor. The other thing is, if I'm talking about GitHub Copilot or Project IDX, I'm tied into GitHub. Now, I like GitHub. I have no issues with GitHub whatsoever. But I also use Codeberg and ForgeJo and GitT and GitLab. When it's a command line client, where my source code lives, my business, not the tool's business. And I really like that. It gives me the confidence that wherever I want to push my code, Git SSH, I can still do it with the command line client.
And let me just take this moment for those that haven't been following along. Project IDX is now known as Firebase Studio.
Is it?
Yes.
I am guilty. Thank you, Alan, for correcting me. I'm still in my brain thinking of it as Project IDX.
No, that's fine. And there's so much going on, it's hard to keep track of all of these multitude of changes.
Correct.
Yes, no, that's one of the great things is that, really it works everywhere. As long as you can run Node version 18, and that's widely supported everywhere, it'll run. It runs on Linux, it runs on Macs, it runs on Windows, and you don't even need to do anything weird on Windows to get it to work. It just works there as it understands the Windows environment natively. You're not running in one of the weird Windows subsystems.
Gotcha. Well, let's take a look at it if you have time.
Yeah, let's take a look.
We'll give it a shot here. I have one of my repos up here for Windows subsystem for Linux. And what we can see here is it's just a project. It's a countdown timer. In fact, if we do npm run, npm start, apologies, this is going to fire up a X window session for a Pomodoro timer. So I'm always trying to keep myself productive. So I'm always inventing Pomodoro timers to keep track of this. And we can also compile this npm run build Windows, and this is going to go ahead and build an Electron app for Windows. Now, before we started recording, I ran this and realized it was not compiling, And I swear to you, I use Gemini CLI to solve my wine issues and my apt binary issues. But I didn't record it. But I'll tell you, I immediately went to Gemini to say, my build's failing. And what was cool is when I fired up Gemini, and I'll wait for it while it's building here to tell you about this. When I fired up Gemini to do it, all I said is, my build is failing when I run npm run build Windows. It says, can I go ahead and run it? I said, yes. And it ran it. It captured the logs, and it said, you're missing this wine library, but it needs sudo. So why don't you hop out and do it and come back? And I quit, and I came back, and there you go. It went ahead and finished compiling, but it helped me interactively. And when it got to commands it wasn't allowed to do, it went and asked me if it was okay to do that.
And I think that's an important point, actually, is that, in the kind of the first generation that we saw of a lot of these command line tools, people were building things that would just run on your system. There was no sandboxing, there was no limiting, there was no built-in, project focus. If you told it to delete the hard drive, it would go try to delete the hard drive. Sure, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
When I use Gemini CLI, and I assume Claude's CLI is similar, is that when I try to tell it to work on a file outside of the project that I'm currently in, it says, no, I can't do that. I can't read your Etsy password file for you because that's outside of my scope.
Yeah.
And I like that. There's this conscious, deliberate security effort. And if I wanted to run it in an even more secure sandbox, they give you instructions on how to set that up and how to run it. And I really, really appreciate that security focus.
One of the places that I sometimes do that with is I'll use dev containers or GitHub code spaces, which are just hosted dev containers, where it runs my development environment inside of a container. And then anything going on there is really isolated and not seeing the rest of my file system.
So let's take a further look.
You betcha. So this built a Windows installer, which I can show you right here. And we can, of course, double click it, and it's going to install Windows and run it, and then we'll have an app. But it's not that interesting. You would just see the same app, but running natively in Windows. Now, one of the things I'd like to do is have a system diagram. Like I know that I have some code here, but if others wanted to help me, because it's an open source repo, it sure would be nice if we had some markdown for that. So I'll give you the choice. Should we start with Claude or should we start with Gemini?
Let's start with Claude.
All right, so let's do Claude. And we're going to say, yep, you have permission to do this. I've already logged into Claude. And so I'm going to say, I have an app that is a Node.js Electron app. Please create an architecture diagram using Markdown in a system.md file and use mermaid.js for the diagram. I like mermaid.js just because it's something I can easily visualize, and it's something these text editors do a fantastic job with. Okay. I'll go ahead and say go. I have not done this before, so live demo time. Hopefully it works.
That's always the fun part.
And so it's going to tell me, it tells me what it heard. It's going to go ahead and create a to-do list, so tasks that it wants to do. It's going to read in my files, and it's going to start cranking away. So check the box that it explored the code base, it thinks it understands it, and now it's going to go ahead and create it. Now, because I pay for it, I'm just watching that token thing scrolling right now, hearing pennies dropping, just to do this. Now, at the end of the day, it's not that much money, but it now has proposed. Here's the output it's going to make. Here's the sequence diagram. And so I'm going to say, go ahead, yes. And a lot of times, I do this also for Gemini. Go ahead and keep doing it. Don't keep asking me. I'm a busy man. Go ahead and rock and roll.
And again, there's another example of that security level is, let you determine, before you're about to do something, let me make that call. Or, I've seen you do it a few times. Go ahead.
Exactly. So now I'm going to go ahead and quit out of here. So we'll do, and I actually see it cost me 15 cents, 14 cents to go ahead and do that ask. What I'll now want to do is see what it made and see that it made a system.md. I'm trying if I can view that very easily. Let's do a cat of the system.md. I'm going to see a mermaid graph here. So let's go ahead and take this graph. And one of the ways I do this before I push it up to GitHub, because GitHub will render that markdown accurately, is I will do the mermaid live editor. I paste it into mermaid live. It's mermaid.live, where you can paste mermaid code, and actually it'll show this. This is what it's going to see on GitHub. So when we look at our Git repo, we will see this diagram. This is a great way for us to see what it came up with, and it shows me that it has source files, a target platform, the builds, and disks. So for me, I don't know if this was the right answer. To me, this looks more like it defined the files it saw in the system and a layout. But that was what we saw in the code editor. So let's bring up the code editor again. This said, this is the build process. Sorry, that was the build process. Here's a sequence diagram. This should be really interesting. Let's grab that one to the clipboard. I'm going to go ahead and paste that in. And I'm going to bring it up to here. Actually, that's pretty good. It does the start-stop event, the timer. I would argue that's pretty accurate. What do you think?
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah. So it kind of, it did what I asked, and you can say, yeah, it did mermaid. We could push it up to GitHub and see it. So I'm going to now say, let's try Gemini just to do a comparison, okay?
Okay, do we want to remove or delete or edit it in a different file? Or
Sure, let's move that one out of the way. Good call. We'll move system to system Claude. Now I'm going to say the same thing to Gemini. Now I should point out, I installed Gemini with Node, and I've set a Google project so it could authenticate me. So I've done that behind the scenes. But if you haven't, it will prompt you right here in the UI to go ahead and authenticate. And if you need to set a project environment variable, it'll tell you how to do it. So we're all good to go. I'm going to say, I would like to document the system architecture of this Node.js Doro timer in a system.md file. Please create the diagrams with mermaid.js. Now we're going to see how much faster this is. I'm willing to bet you it's way faster. And we're also going to see how much context it burns. So unlike Claude Code, which kind of gives you the total at the end, the way that you can tell what you're expending in Gemini CLI is kind of to watch this part of the page. Also, I love those little, they put these pithy little
they do.
things.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm glad they did it.
And what's funny is it's interspersed between real messages and kind of random fun stuff.
So here it is. It's gone ahead and asked if it can do it. And I'm going to say yes. It's done it. I mean, I got distracted because I was talking to you, but you saw it. You completed it like at least twice as fast as Claude did. And I only burned 1% of my context in doing it. So I'm going to go ahead and do Control-C.
The other thing I like about the way Gemini does this is when it showed that summary, it doesn't show the whole change. It just kind of says, here are some changes. If you want to see the whole file, hit Control-S. But otherwise, I'm just going to kind of give you a summary of what I did.
That is nice. And what we'll see here is the total token usage. You mentioned that you get like 1,000 requests a day, and I used 4. So I'd have to hammer this quite a lot to really expend anything.
And again, to be clear, that 4, it wasn't that you typed in 4 things. It's that Gemini did some back and forth on its own.
Indeed. So let's go ahead and look at this diagram. Here we see a sequence diagram that it came together. And I'm going to go ahead and put this over in the Mermaid Live editor so we can see it It's interesting. This is a completely different diagram than we saw
It's
from
a different
Claude.
diagram.
I might argue this is more from a code perspective, where we saw the loop, the countdowns, and how it's working. Is
Uh-huh.
it wrong? No, it just took my question a different way, and I
And
appreciate that. That is an
and I
interesting.
think, yeah, and I think that kind of goes to just, the whole sense of using these tools in general does kind of go down to you need to kind of know how to talk with them. They're not going to give you the same result each time in each way. Each one views it differently, and you kind of need to learn how it is. Just like if you were talking to a junior programmer, every person might hear you a different way, and you need to learn how to work with those people.
It is funny that you bring that up because I find myself engaging with the AI tool as if it's a senior intern, like that it's a junior developer, senior intern in that range,
Yeah.
where I'll go, did you consider updating the Helm chart? And then they'll go, oh yeah, I should update the Helm chart. Did you update the tag that we want to push up to Docker Hub? Oh yeah, I should. And so I find myself exactly. Is the word anthropomorphizing? I find myself
Yes.
treating it like a person. I know it's not, but I'm going to keep saying I think he missed it.
Well, but I think also that's how the systems are. That's how the prompts are trained, is to let you treat them as people. That's kind of the design of them, I think.
Indeed. No.
When it finished, the summary. Can you scroll back up and
Mhm.
see what the summary timing was again?
You bet.
Because that was, I thought, really interesting. Yeah. So the wall time on this was about 2 minutes again, but the API time, the time that it was doing work, was dramatically lower.
Indeed.
Um,
And while this was a quick example, on my bigger ones, it's really noticeable. The speed increase. I think I used a profane word when I was chatting with Gemini to say they were bad, because I thought it was amazing. It was so much faster that when I'm hammering it with big asks, then the time becomes really noticeable. Because Claude, because it'll keep trying something and come back and rethinking it, it'll take 2 or 3 minutes in that interchange again, and I'm watching my costs go up. And Gemini is again half the time.
that's really interesting. Now, one of the other things that I noticed both Claude and Gemini do, and that's that they let you kind of create a system prompt file. And Gemini calls that the Gemini.md file.
Indeed, indeed. And I'm going to see if I can do this quickly because I think I have one from another repo I was working on yesterday. Um, I think it was in my PYBS poster, which posts to Blue Sky, another open source app. So if I go to my Gemini, yes, my Gemini folder here, we're going to see that some of the things I like to do, this is a me thing, is I like to have an arrogant jerk talk to me. So I will tell it to be mean, be terse, get to the point. And there's something just amusing to me when I do that, that I can actually tell Gemini, don't be polite with me. Or I'll tell it to talk like a pirate. You go nuts. But you can, the idea here though is not to make your Gemini talk like a pirate, though I'm sure they don't mind that you do that, is to do things like ensure your coding styles or
Yes.
whether you want underscores. And you can also point out things that you should go look at too, so that if you had other files you wanted to bring in, like a styling guide that you use within your
Yep.
company, you always have that as an option to bring in there.
So one of the things that's neat to me about the Gemini MD is that you don't actually have to stick it in each project. You can
Correct.
you put it at whatever level makes the most sense. So for example, if I've got a bunch of different projects, I can put at a fairly high level over all of them saying, here are my general style guidelines. And then you can also put refinements to that in the project itself or further down closer to the project.
I believe even
And
when you
what,
fire up Gemini here, it'll
yeah,
tell you which one it looked for. It's going to say, hey, oh, I found it in the project, so I'm going to go ahead and use that. Or here it said it used one.
I think you can memory list. is a command that you can tell it, and it'll tell you all of them that it's using. You can give it, have it give you which one it is.
Right. Let's
That's
have
really
fun.
powerful to me.
Let's ask, is my README up to date? Let's see how surly it gets when I ask it a simple question. So this is the junior intern who did not have his
Right.
Red Bull in the morning.
And here it's telling you again, it's gone and read the README file. What do you actually mean by up to date? That's really surly.
It's funny. It won't swear at you, so if you're worried about is it in SFW, it won't do profanity. I actually have asked to use profanity, it won't do it. So they do have some controls on there. But yeah, it's absolute buffoon. So just know that if you get humor from doing that kind of thing, you can ask it to tell you dad jokes along the way or interject random stories. It's surprising what you can coax the agent into doing for you.
So one of the things that I like about Gemini, the Gemini.md, the instructions, is that I can kind of tell it what tools I can use. And that includes MCP servers. It includes what programs are available on the command line. I can, either enable it or limit it however I want.
Right, the MCP servers. So if you have MCP servers that's serving up more content, you can really expand the abilities of the agent to do more in your environment. That's a great call out. Not every company wants to put their MCP servers on the global interwebs.
Right. And this is something, again, Claude does it as well because Anthropic were the ones that started the MCP spec. What was really cool to me, though, was this was a demonstration that I saw when they were launching Gemini CLI, and that's that they weren't using it to write or edit code. And this launched my brain into a billion places. They have some MCP servers that will call Google's image generation and manipulation tools. So they were giving Gemini CLI instructions like, come up with an image that does this. And it was calling ImageN, downloading the image, showing it, approve the image, and say, okay, now take that and animate it. And it would send that image to VO, get the video from VO, download it, preview it. Try that again. Make do it this way instead.
Well, you're giving me ideas. I mean,
I saw that demo and my brain exploded. What I use Gemini CLI for, the biggest use I use it for, isn't actually for video generation. It's to help produce this podcast.
Oh, really?
So what I will do is, I edit it using a tool called Descript, and it lets me download a number of artifacts. I download a video, I download an audio, I download subtitles, and I download a transcript. And I've been doing this for 200 episodes now. Oh, 200 episodes now.
Hey, that's awesome.
Previously, I had been going into AI Studio and saying, here is a transcript for a podcast, a technical podcast. Give me a good title, give me a good description, give me the timestamps, and give me the hashtags. And then I drag and drop the transcript file in, and it would give me some answers. I then cut and paste that into another text document, and I'd say, hey, the title, I don't like the title, can you come up with something better? And it would give me some suggestions, and I'd cut and paste one of them into the other document. And there was a lot of dragging, dropping, cutting, pasting. Now I go into Gemini CLI, and I say, generate the description for the transcript. And the Gemini.md has told it the file name, how I format my file names, which one the transcript is, specifications for exactly what it should be delivering when I ask for a description, and that's title, description, timestamps, hashtags, what the output file should look like. So it just goes ahead and does all of that, says, do you want me to save it to this file? I say, yes. It does so. I'll look at it and I'll say, let's edit that title for something punchier. It says, okay, reads the transcript again, gives a suggestion for a new title. I say that looks good. Goes and edits the file.
Oh my.
So I don't have to do any cutting and pasting. I don't have to do any of that anymore.
Where you're inspiring me is I'm often using this for code, but when I fire up Midjourney, I'm using that to create some different icons, some pictures. If I can stay in Gemini and say, all right, I've just created a page that's all about system diagrams. Can you create an icon that would be a good fit at the top of the page? Can you create maybe the fave icon file from the graphic on the main page? And then I don't need to keep dancing to other tools. So now I really want to say, can you take that system diagram and actually make it into a PNG or an SVG? Can I?
Well, so here's the neat thing. Say, go ahead and make it into an SVG. That's something that almost all of these tools can easily do. And if you've got an SVG to PNG converter installed locally, you can tell Gemini.md about it and say, okay, now that you've made that SVG, give me the PNG for it. And it will call that program to do that conversion for you. One of the things I often have it doing is looking at a frame in the video to describe the host so I can create a thumbnail. Now, I don't want to upload the whole video, and if I did, it wouldn't. Gemini CLI originally didn't deal with videos, it now does. But what I wanted to do is get just one frame and deal with that one frame. Well, I've told it I have FFmpeg installed. It's figured out the command line options for FFmpeg. It runs the command, or prompts me if I want it to, gets the frame, saves it to a file, sends the file to Gemini, gets the description back. Saves it in the file that's supposed to have the thumbnail description.
That's awesome.
It just, and all of that was described in English, in human terms.
Well, see, what I'm inspired to do is, see if I still have it on my desk. The other day I asked Gemini, this is before Gemini CLI, to create a picture for my blog, which is Fresh Brewed. And so it made Fresh Brewed, it wrote it out, and then I had an SVG to STL converter, and I kicked it out on the printer back there. So now I'm going to try some more complicated things for SVGs that I'll then turn to STLs, which I'll then 3D print and see what I get out of it. Some of the things that I like are like GitHub had a project where you could do your GitHub commit history as basically a city diagram.
Oh,
so
nice.
I print this out every now and again on my GitHub history, and I kind of want to play with this. Now that I know they can do that natively, Gemini CLI might be my new tool of choice.
So yeah, I feel like for people that are comfortable with a CLI, this really, really opens doors. It now says anything that you need a file for, anything you want a file for, anything you want to save in a file, and you can describe it to the CLI, and it will do it. And if you're doing something consistently, define the parameters for it in the Gemini.md file, and it will, use those as kind of baseline instructions.
Indeed. And to go back to something you brought up at the beginning of this, one of the things that we got to be careful about is to make sure that we check in often, because as you get excited and start asking questions, can you do this? Can you do this? It's very hard to say, can you undo the thing you did? It's not as good at...
It's not very good at that, no.
Correct.
That's an excellent point. So, I don't know about you, but every time I use these tools, I am just kind of like, I got another idea. And this, I feel like, has been one of the first times in this LLM era that I really feel that way. That I really feel, before I felt like, sure, there's a lot of things I can do, but there's a lot of, I need to manually, move from A to B to C. Here, I feel like this is the first time where I've got the system doing that for me. And that's not all AI work. There's a lot of real programming behind that, but that's what I like about computers, is they're, have them doing that kind of grunt work for me.
100%. So in my day-to-day job, I sometimes work on transcatheter aortic valve implantation software. It's a mouthful, but there's times where I have to write some C++ code, and I'm not that great at it. And so I'll use the AI to help me with creating unit tests, but the stuff that really matters is stuff that I'll write myself. And so I oftentimes do the things I might call toil work to throw at the AI, because I can see if the unit test was written right. It's just a lot of cut and dry. So I do like that, using the AI for those kind of activities.
So I can easily see people using these kinds of tools and combining them with MCP servers or combining them with the applications you have installed and just doing all sorts of stuff. I really hope people watch this, get inspired, get their own ideas for how they want to use this, and give us that kind of feedback. Let's start this conversation about how do we use these tools for more than just code. How do we kind of elevate the everyday stuff that we're doing and do it better? And I hope they share it with us. Where can folks find you? What's the best way that folks can reach out to
Oh,
you?
I'm an avid blogger at freshbrewed.science, and I post to LinkedIn a fair amount.
So I hope folks reach out to you there, share what it is that you are working on, and I am sure we're going to be talking about this kind of stuff a lot more on Two Voice Devs.
Two voice devs.
Thanks so much for joining me today. This has been great.
Thanks, Alan.